Deep within the Amazon, a whisper traveled from tribe to tribe. A story of a city made of gold. Its palaces gleamed beneath the jungle canopy, its streets paved with precious stones. The king, legend said, covered himself in gold dust each morning, washing it off in a sacred lake at night. This was El Dorado, the lost city of gold, a tale of unimaginable wealth hidden in the vast, uncharted green of South America. For centuries this legend haunted explorers, driving them to madness and death. They left everything behind, chasing a phantom through treacherous jungles and over impassable mountains. Disease, starvation, and hostile tribes claimed many, all for a city that might not exist. The question echoed, could El Dorado be real? The Amazon was one of the last blank spaces on the map, a place where myths could grow as wild as the jungle itself. El Dorado became the ultimate symbol of possibility, blending greed for gold with the romance of a lost civilization. The search became more than a quest for riches. It was a quest for proof that wonders could exist in our world. Men endured unimaginable hardships, clinging to hope and unreliable rumors. They pushed deeper into a continent that guarded its secrets fiercely. The jungle kept El Dorado hidden, its mystery growing with every failed expedition. The allure of the unknown pulled at the edges of maps and imaginations. The legend was too magnificent to dismiss, too tempting to ignore. Explorers staked their lives on the belief that they could uncover the truth. The story of El Dorado became a perfect storm of desire and mystery. The city of gold was always just out of reach, a mirage in the endless green. The jungle's silence was the only answer to their desperate search. And so the legend endured, growing ever brighter in the darkness of the unknown. The legend of El Dorado began with a man and a ritual, not a city. Long before the Spanish, the Muisca people performed a sacred ceremony at Lake Guatavita. Gold was a sacred offering, not currency. A new chief, covered in gold dust, became El Dorado. He was taken to the lake's center on a raft laden with gold and emeralds. He cast treasures into the water, then dove in, washing away the gold. This symbolized renewal, a private tradition. Outsiders heard fragments, igniting a myth that drove Europe into a frenzy. The story spread, becoming greater than its origins. The gilded man transformed into a city of gold. The legend was born from a sacred act, twisted by rumor. The Muisca's ceremony became a global obsession. The world would chase a fantasy instead of the truth. The myth of El Dorado was set in motion, destined to reshape history. The sacred became legendary, and the search for gold would never be the same. The whispers of the gilded man would echo, and the world would never stop searching for the city that never was. The Spanish conquistadors arrived in the New World, hungry for gold and glory. They heard whispers of a man covered in gold and their imaginations ran wild. A sacred ritual became, in their minds, proof of a city overflowing with treasure. The Spanish could not fathom a culture that offered gold to the gods. They saw only endless riches. The story of the gilded man became the story of a golden king, and then a golden kingdom. Greed, misunderstanding, and brutality twisted the tale into legend. The name El Dorado shifted from man to city, and the myth spread like wildfire. Every explorer wanted to be the one to find it, chasing not just wealth but fame and power. Expeditions were launched on the flimsiest evidence, driven by dreams of ultimate reward. The search for El Dorado became an obsession, a fever that gripped the Spanish colonies. They saw the New World as a treasure chest, and El Dorado as the key. This belief justified cruelty and risk, fueling a relentless quest. The legend was no longer a Muisca ritual, it was a European fantasy projected onto the Amazon. The more people believed, the more real it seemed. The myth became a self-fulfilling prophecy, driving men to risk everything. The Spanish were not just searching for gold, they were chasing a dream. The dream of El Dorado became a force that shaped history. The legend grew, untethered from its origins, unstoppable in its allure. The city of gold was now a phantom, always just out of reach. The obsession would claim countless lives, but the myth endured. El Dorado was no longer a man or a ritual. It was a promise, and a curse, and the world would never be the same. The quest for El Dorado drew the most ambitious and ruthless men of the age. Hardened by war, they saw the New World as a treasury to be looted. El Dorado was the ultimate prize, a test of faith, courage, and greed. Expeditions became moving cities, hundreds of soldiers, thousands of forced porters, and herds of livestock. They hacked through jungle, weighed down by armor and weapons, prepared for war against a golden empire. But the true enemies were the jungle's heat, rain, insects, and disease. The dream of gold quickly turned into a nightmare of suffering. Men drowned, fell to disease or starved, eating their own animals and even leather. The shining armor rusted, trapping them in the suffocating humidity. The quest for gold became a desperate struggle for survival, yet the fever for El Dorado refused to die. Leaders pushed their men onward, chasing rumors deeper into the abyss. The further they went, the more they lost, but turning back meant disgrace. The Golden City was always just beyond the next river, a phantom leading them to ruin. The jungle swallowed their hopes, but the obsession endured. El Dorado remained a mirage, always out of reach. In 1541, Gonzalo Pizarro led one of the most infamous expeditions in search of El Dorado. With over 200 Spaniards and thousands of indigenous porters, he marched east from Quito, seeking the fabled land of cinnamon near the Golden City. Disaster struck as soon as they entered the Amazon basin. Earthquakes, relentless rain, and disease decimated the group. Supplies vanished and starvation set in. Desperate, Pizarro sent Francisco de Orellana downriver for food, but Orellana never returned, swept away by the current. Orellana's journey became the first navigation of the Amazon, but for Pizarro, it was abandonment. Stranded and starving, Pizarro turned back. The return was even more horrific. Most died, and only a handful staggered back to Quito. Of the thousands who set out, almost none survived. They found no gold, no cinnamon, only death and suffering. Pizarro's quest ended in utter failure. The jungle claimed another dreamer. El Dorado remained lost, its legend growing with every defeat. El Dorado's legend captivated not just Spain, but England too. Sir Walter Raleigh, courtier and explorer, believed the Golden City lay in Guyana. In 1595 he led an expedition up the Orinoco River, forging alliances and collecting rumors. Raleigh found no city, but returned to England convinced of its existence, publishing a best-selling book that fueled the myth. Years later, desperate to regain favor, he led a second disastrous expedition. His son was killed, and he returned empty-handed. Raleigh was arrested and executed, his obsession with El Dorado costing him everything. His story became a cautionary tale. The Golden City could lead to ruin. The legend had claimed another victim. Yet Raleigh's belief kept the myth alive in Europe. The search for El Dorado was now a global obsession. The city remained a phantom, but its allure only grew. The Amazon jungle was the greatest obstacle to finding El Dorado. European explorers, unprepared for its challenges, were slowly destroyed by the heat, humidity, and disease. Their armor rusted, their clothes rotted, and the wildlife posed constant threats. Mosquitoes spread deadly diseases, and even insects became a form of torture. The jungle was a world of hidden dangers, and the conquistadors were blind to its realities. The idea of a massive city in the rainforest was a fantasy. The soil couldn't support such a population. Indigenous peoples lived in smaller temporary settlements, adapted to the land. The myth of a golden city was a European projection, not an Amazonian reality. Expedition after expedition vanished into the green wilderness. The jungle protected its secrets with climate, disease, and sheer scale. The lost city remained lost because it was never there to be found. The jungle's verdict was final failure. The dream of El Dorado was defeated by nature itself. The legend endured, but the city was always a mirage. The Amazon swallowed the ambitions of empires. El Dorado's greatest secret was that it never existed. As exploration gave way to science, the search for El Dorado shifted. Archaeologists traced the legend back to the Muisca and Lake Guatavita. Attempts to drain the lake recovered some gold, but the grand fortune was never found. The most famous artifact, the Muisca raft, depicts the golden ritual in exquisite detail. This small sculpture discovered near Bogotá is the closest thing to the real El Dorado. Historians now agree, El Dorado was never a city, but a misunderstood ritual. The Spanish transformed a spiritual ceremony into a tale of endless riches. The real story is one of cultural misunderstanding and greed. The Muisca's sacred relationship with gold was lost in translation. The legend caused immense suffering, chasing a fantasy across a continent. The truth was subtle and spiritual, not material. El Dorado's real treasure was never gold, it was the story itself. The search for El Dorado changed history, driving exploration and mapping of South America. The quest led to real discoveries, but also to violence, greed, and the destruction of indigenous cultures. The myth justified atrocities and left a legacy of suffering, yet the legend refuses to die, capturing imaginations even today. El Dorado appears in movies, books, and games, a symbol of ultimate reward. The myth is more powerful than reality, a universal symbol of dreams and quests. Perhaps the true treasure was the quest itself. The legend inspired feats of endurance and exploration. It revealed both courage and cruelty, knowledge and greed. The Golden City was a mirage, but the search was real. El Dorado reminds us that the greatest journeys are driven by dreams. The story endures, shining brighter than any gold. In the end, it is the power of myth that outlasts all else.